to Scoop City. So we've got the NFL trade deadline less than a week away, and we got a lot of draft implications on the line. We welcome in the Athletics draft guru, the beast himself, Dane Brugler, joining Scoop City. But before we hop into everything that's going on in football right now, when do you start working on the beast? Like, are you already like on chapter 15?
It's a living, breathing document. I mean, there's no starting on it. It just kind of is always just there because you're always getting information for future versions, right? So I'm pretty far along. This is my favorite part of the process because we actually have new tape. Every single week where we're being able to look at these guys and say, okay, I didn't know he could do this, or, guys coming off a bad game, and it's something you have to factor into his evaluation. So during the fall is my favorite time of putting the beast together because there's a lot of moving parts. Rankings are fluid. Guys come out of nowhere. And it's going to continue all the way through December and into January with the 12-team playoff this year. It's going to make it a lot of fun.
Jeez.
I know we call it the beast, but I feel like around the NFL it should be called the Bible because there's so many head coaches and GMs who read your stuff and they've got so many opinions about it too, things they agree with, things that they disagree with.
Yeah.
They like they like to talk about it too. I'm like, call Dane. Like, what do you want me to do?
He's the man.
I hear it. Trust me. I hear it. Trust me.
But you're so respected. So if you are a listener of Scoop City and perhaps you haven't checked out The Beast, make sure you do that. It is just, without a doubt, the most popular thing we do at The Athletic. And it has everything to do with the work that Dane collects all year long and the relationships and also just the analysis he's able to provide. So make sure you check that out. So let's just get into it, right? So much quarterback talk. We've seen not one, but two quarterbacks from that 2023 quarterback class now get benched. CJ Stroud, obviously the diamond, the superior diamond in that group. What did the league miss on these guys as we're seeing a lot of organizations appear to be moving on?
Don't forget about Will Levis either, because he's right up there too. He's like halfway benched.
Well, I know there are a lot of like half in, half outs.
and there's definitely a world where Will Levis would have been a top 10 pick. I mean, the Titans were calling everybody in the back half of that first round to trade in and get Will Levis, and they just happened to get him in the second round. So really, it's basically on par for what we've seen from quarterbacks in the first round, right? I mean, some years are better than others, but the hit rate on quarterbacks is less than 50% in the first round. So I think you look at quarterbacks when they're drafted. Some are overdrafted and some are just plain misses. And I think this 2023 class had both in the top 5. Anthony Richardson, he's a player that was just overdrafted because of the rare physical traits. He had less than 400 passing attempts in college, a losing record in his 13 starts. He had more 100-yard rushing games, 4, than 250-yard passing games, 3. So all these red flags, and he was hurt. There was a concussion, there was a right knee. He had surgery. Go back to his high school days. He had a shoulder that missed time. So, and obviously health has been an issue for him now in the NFL. The Colts knew the risks here. And that's why benching him it's surprising, but it's not. It's surprising because, again, the Colts knew what it was going to take. It was not going to be overnight. His accuracy, his pacing, his mechanics, a lot of the simple details of playing the position, there just wasn't any consistency. Literally the last line of his draft report in the Beast that year was he needs on the field reps and he needs a patient coaching staff who is going to weather the early storm. And being hurt most of last year obviously hurt, but it's also not surprising with this move because sure, in a vacuum, it makes sense to keep playing the young kid and let him battle through adversity. But there are 52 other players in that locker room, not to mention hundreds of, from the coaches, the support staff, the front office, the people that are working for the organization. Hundreds of people are affected by wins and losses. And in a perfect world, you stay competitive, you play through the learning curves, the bumps in the road. But you know what? At this end of the day, the Colts are leaving too much production on the field. The negative plays add up, and the other players, they see it. And so, and meanwhile, you have a backup that's led a team to the playoffs as recently as last year. They had to make this move. And so, will we see Richardson on the field again? There's no doubt. But right now, I think it was the only move the Colts could make. And so this not to get off topic, but I think an interesting byproduct of this situation is it's kind of a reminder that NFL is not a developmental league. And a great example is Jaden Daniels, who we'll talk about more in a little bit, I'm sure. But had he gone pro after his third year at Arizona State, and he considered it, he knew he wanted out of that situation. Instead, he opted to transfer. And so if he would have come out, he would have been a day 3 pick, and who knows where Daniels is now. He chose to transfer, goes to LSU for 2 years, and those were just monumental years for his development. And, I get pushback on that because if you have a chance to be a first-round pick, go get paid. I get it. But with NIL and transfers now in college football, it makes a lot more sense to find the best solution or situation, develop, get paid. And I think we'll see a lot more underclassmen quarterbacks stay put in college instead of chasing that NFL money.
Well, that's with Anthony Richardson. He has 10 career starts, right? And so you bench him. But is it? I mean, let's be real. Like the NFL has an epidemic, a quarterback epidemic, and they don't develop guys. And they look at Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield this time. They're in different situations with different coaches, different fits, and they've put the team around them, and they've flourished this year. And with Anthony Richardson, why do you think teams are willing to reach like that for a player that they think he can be, but then also not develop him and pull the plug after 10 weeks? We've seen it. We saw it with Bryce Young. I mean, he's got more starts, but when we see it with Anthony Richardson, that's what I don't get.
I just think that there is an unknown variable when you draft any position, but especially quarterbacks. How will guys answer to NFL speed? And I don't know, maybe one day with virtual reality and all the, we'll be able to find more of an answer to that unknown variable. But I just think it's something that is hard to figure out. And sometimes with the case of like a Sam Darnold, where the situation was just so bad where he was originally that, okay, a couple years later, a couple situations differently, he's able to surpass that and get better and have that added experience, and guys are just more mature. And if they have the mental toughness to power through, great. But okay, that brings us to Bryce Young. I mean, he is a guy that, because of his size, I think a lot of people were like, it's not going to work. And but I don't know, the size is not necessarily what's holding him back in the NFL. I mean, he played in the SEC where his offensive line was just as big as the Panthers' offensive line. It's not like he can't see over the offensive line. So size is a factor, but not the key factor what's holding him back. He just has zero confidence right now. And I think that's so different than the player we saw at Alabama, which makes it hard to reconcile. If this was like a Trey Lance situation where he was playing at North Dakota State, and he wasn't playing NFL level defenses each week, or he wasn't playing in 100,000 plus seat stadiums on the road, it would make more sense. But it was high stakes every week in the SEC, and he handled it well. He won a Heisman Trophy. He played at a high level. So those intangibles of what he showed in college are why so many people in the NFL were willing to look past the size, look past the average arm, and be believers in Bryce Young. I had one NFL GM tell me he was quote-unquote genius level on the whiteboard with just the way that he processed everything and understood what to do, how to attack the defense. So, I mean, he truly operated like a point guard, but that's just a total opposite of what we've seen in Carolina up to this point. So, I don't know. Is it a situation where a new home is going to help him get past that, or is this going to be a mental block that follows him throughout his career?
I know Dane, I recently spoke to one of his coaches at Alabama just to try to get an understanding of what's the disconnect. What is Carolina not doing to try to get a better understanding? Because I think most of the league is looking at him going, okay, well, maybe he isn't as great. And, this coach just reassured me again of like, no, you don't understand. He's so smart. He has such an understanding of this game, and he's talented. And like yourself, having conversations with GMs and coaches around the league right before that draft, it was hard it was hard to find anyone criticizing him. And the size thing was not brought up as much. It was mentioned, but Chase and I spent some time in Denver this training camp with Sean Payton, and I was talking to him on the sideline a little bit about just picking quarterbacks, and he said it's so darn hard to figure out if someone will pan out. But when the measurables are all lined up, when everything is even and one thing is off just a bit, you go with the traditional type. because we were referencing the Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud situation with Carolina, and obviously that's just the way he functions, and I'm sure that's easy to say now when you look back at it. But I do think around the league, there was a big miss in terms of who the better quarterback was going to be coming out, because I know most people thought it was going to be Bryce Young. So it's been the year of the resurged quarterback, right? Like you mentioned, the Sam Darnold, the Baker Mayfields, even Geno Smith a bit, even maybe perhaps Jameis Winston.
Yeah, for sure.
Are you a firm believer in the program of putting a player like Bryce in a place that he can flourish, like we're seeing Kevin O'Connell do with Sam Darnold?
Well, I don't think we talk enough about how dependent the quarterback position is. It's not as simple as, okay, let this quarterback come in and he'll elevate everything around him. Does it I mean, and obviously, Chase, you can speak to this better than anybody.
I know he's sitting there like,
Yeah. It's a very dependent position. It doesn't matter if your offensive line can't block, if your receivers can't get open, if the routes, if the timing is not correct with the routes, if there's no run game to speak of, and the defense knows that. All these factors play into it. And, it's sometimes we try to boil it down to these simple aspects when in reality, it's so much more complicated. There's so many different factors that go into this. And it gets amplified in the NFL when you only have 16, 17 games in the regular season to, really put your best foot forward. And sometimes it can snowball. So, it's, for rookie quarterbacks, for young quarterbacks, you do your best. If you're an NFL GM and a head coach, you do your best to create just a cohesive infrastructure within your offense that's going to help your offense succeed, and you roll the dice and see what happens. Sometimes it's as simple as that.
Speaking of two cohesive units, let's move forward to this year's guys, right? It's the rookies, mainly Caleb Williams versus Jaden Daniels. I think Caleb has played better than he did in the first 2 weeks, right? Mm-hmm. He was a rookie. But Jaden has really put himself, in my opinion, in almost an MVP conversation with the way that he's playing. He's instilled hope in that fan base, in that franchise, and everyone. I mean, Diana used to cover it, and she's getting excited about the Washington Commanders and just everything that they're doing. We've had PFT on back-to-back episodes. Like, he's getting pumped about it. Well, what have you seen in their maturation process? Because you're getting way different results. And it's Jaden is looking right now like he understands it a little bit better.
Well, I think this is a perfect along the lines of what we're talking about. Because when you watch that Bears-Commanders game in real time and then go back and watch the tape, I don't think the main takeaway is, oh, wow, look at the gap in these two quarterbacks.
Totally agree.
I think the difference is, again, the offensive infrastructure and what they're being asked to do. The Bears, it just feels like they're still trying to create an identity. The sequencing 100%. Of the play calls, the execution of the offensive line, it feels messy. It doesn't feel cohesive. Whereas, okay, the Commanders, it's the complete opposite. Cliff Kingsbury, give him all the credit in the world because he's putting Jaden Daniels in position to succeed. You see quick game. You see him really tapping into what made him so productive at LSU, the downfield accuracy, the designed movement. This comparison is not apples to apples because they're different quarterbacks. But this was the final line of his report for me is Daniels forces defenses to defend him like Lamar Jackson because of his ability to buy time and his ability to create yards if they're there. They're different quarterbacks, but just that threat of what they can do with their legs is something that opens things up in a big way. And I'm a big believer in explosive plays translating from college to the NFL, and Daniels had 90 explosive plays just last year at LSU. We've never seen anything like that before. And I think that has translated to the NFL much faster than just about any of us expected because of Kingsbury, because of an offensive line that's playing really well, and everything is meshing around the quarterback.
So let me ask you this. Sorry, Dan, before you go.
No.
Why do you think that the Bears got so enamored with Caleb? Because it was like Caleb. No doubt, no. Now, I would say I thought for sure Caleb, when I was evaluating him, was a little bit better prospect because everyone saw that Patrick Mahomes type pocket escapability type thing. But then I saw Jaden, and I'm like, man, this guy is the best pure progression passer, but also can run like Lamar Jackson. So do you think they overlooked that a little bit?
I don't know overlook, but I think maybe we didn't give Jaden enough credit for what he was doing. And I think part of it factors in how he was playing with two legit number one NFL receivers at LSU.
Yeah.
He was playing behind a really good offensive line. I mean, there were factors around him where, oh man, if Caleb had that, think about what Caleb could do. And I think that when doubters hear, me say about the offensive infrastructure, oh, you're making excuses for Caleb. And honestly, I don't need to make excuses for him because he has more passing touchdowns than Daniels does right now. And he's played in fewer games. I think you look at Williams, his rookie season, and he's playing kind of right on par with what should be expected of a rookie, even number one overall. He's still trying to figure out the speed of the NFL. But he has a lower turnover rate than Josh Allen, than Matthew Stafford, than Dak Prescott. He's had plenty of misses and moments where, he airmailed that one or he missed. He was a tick late coming to this read. That's going to happen. But again, it should be expected. So he's doing enough to help the team win. I mean, this team should be 5-2 if they could cover a Hail Mary. So 100%. I think when you look at the quarterbacks that went 1, 2, 3, so far, I think we can feel good about all three of those quarterbacks that went that high.
Yep.
Drake May, right? So we're seeing him. He's obviously in concussion protocol at this point, but the way the Patriots handled that situation, just having it be a bit of a competition, but then really leaning into saying that he outplayed Jacoby Brissett, but then gave the starting job to Jacoby Brissett. How do you think they handled that?
I was fine with them not starting him right away just because it's, instead of going flip-flop, just let's start the veteran and then, it's probably not going to go great, but we can work in the rookie when we feel he's absolutely ready. We knew we were going to see Drake May at some point this year, and that's really all that mattered. I think they've done a nice job, and May's done a nice job. And studying him at North Carolina, he was cut from the same cloth as Justin Herbert. Physical skill set, really smart.
Thank you.
It's very similar.
He looks identical to him in a jersey.
It's aesthetically and just the way they play, right? No doubt. But even more with May, he's a little more willing than Herbert to really push the football. Now, sometimes that'll, he'll miss some layups or he'll have a turnover, but he's also going to have more explosive plays. And I like that they're using May's athleticism, which it made him. I think a lot of people, when we got the draft process, last March, were like, oh, he's a really good athlete. Well, if you watch his North Carolina tape, his athleticism is what made him such an effective quarterback and why we're talking about him as a top 3 pick. So I love that you're seeing progression with Drake May. And this is an offensive roster that has a lot of holes. So he's having to do different things that we're seeing progress each week. And so I want to see more consistency as we get through this season. But if you're the Patriots, I think you're feeling really good that, okay, this is a guy we can build a franchise around.
Yeah, I liked how they handled him. He wasn't ready to play right away, to be completely honest, behind that offensive line. But speaking of ready to play, 2025, big board. You're mid-season through it. You're right in the weeds, bro. You are grinding on film. You're watching quarterback. I don't care about the other position. We're just going to talk quarterbacks right now. You are grinding on quarterback film. For me, and I've watched very little, right? Yeah. It's Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, Quinn Ewers in some version of top 3. Tell us a little bit about each.
Yeah, and this is going to be a year where the quarterback class, there's a lot up in the air. It's a really fluid situation. It's not like last year where, okay, Caleb Williams, we knew was going to be a top 3 pick. Drake May, we knew was going to go high. At this time last year, it was becoming evident that, Jaden Daniels, he's up there with those guys. This year, I have yet to talk to a scout or anybody with the team who absolutely loves any of these quarterbacks. None of these guys are viewed as, oh yeah, he's going to go top 10. That's a top 10 lock right there. And that's a big difference from last year. So now we're still going to see, I think, at least 1, maybe 2 go in the top 10. Maybe 1 or 2 more end up in the first round as well. Because, again, this is how this works. I mean, we just got done talking about with Anthony Richardson.
For quarterbacks.
They will get overdrafted, exactly. And so, you mentioned 3. I mean, I'm a big fan of Garrett Nussmeier at LSU. He actually reminds me a lot of Tony Romo. But, he has single-digit starts. I hope he goes back. Same thing with Penn State's Drew Allar. Really talented. I hope he goes back. Alabama's Jalen Milroe, a lot of Jalen Hurts to his game, except maybe Milrow's a 4-3 athlete. And so is there a team that's willing to change their offense, kind of like the Eagles did? That could be a lot of fun. George's Carson Beck, he's got some work to do to get into that top 50 mix.
He's too tall for me. When do you ever see a guy over 6'4", 6'5" be successful? You know what I mean? There's that tall trait. I mean, he's a good player, but you know.
He's 6'03", 6, so 6'3" and 3/4. He's
so he's not even 6'4". Okay, so he's not that
he's
tall.
right there
at
that mix, yeah. All right, so if I had to make a bet right now on who the first quarterback draft is going to be, it would be Cam Ward out of Miami. 6'2", 225 pounds, electric arm talent, really elusive in the pocket. He's a very loose player, and that's part of what makes him dangerous, but he is also loose with his decision-making, and that directly leads to negative plays. And the best way I can sum it up is he's a fireworks player. You know, he can create an explosive play on any snap, but fireworks, they also have that big warning label on them, right? When you're careless with fireworks, negative results will follow. And so I'm encouraged by the progress that we've seen from Ward. He was a wing T quarterback in high school, air raid at Incarnate Word, then Washington State.
He was a wing T quarterback?
Back in high school, yeah. He was late to the game and still learning. So, yeah, he's still in an air raid offense now with Miami and Shannon Dawson, but you see a little more variation. And, you know, I think the character reviews I've heard from scouts, really smart, great leader, confident kid. I don't think he's faced a great defense this year. That's kind of the problem with the ACC this year. But again, this is where the 12-team playoff could come into play because, you know, think about last year with Michael Penix. If he doesn't have that 430-yard passing performance against Texas in the semifinals, is he still a top 10 pick? Who knows? You know, consciously or subconsciously, scouts and teams, they're going to weight these playoff games a little bit more, that big stage. So I want to see Miami make the playoff just so we can see Ward on that type of stage. But like I said, I think the natural arm talent, the charisma, along with the upside is going to make him a top 10 pick when it's all said and done. And then you mentioned Shedeur Sanders, who I think probably...
Does he have it?
I think he probably goes first round because he's poised, he's tough, he's accurate. The physical traits don't wow you. And I'm gonna give a quarterback comparison, but I'm gonna qualify it.
I like that.
Okay. So in terms of quarterbacking style, I think the comparison is Jordan Love because they're very fluid with their throwing motions. They bounce around, sometimes backpedal at times, keep the weight on the back foot. They use a lot of different platforms.
Pocket a little bit different in the pocket.
But Shedeur is smaller and he has a B-level arm, not an A-level arm. And so that's the key difference. Wow. And so you're talking about with Shedeur, he's 6'1", 205. Again, the arm is more B than A, like Jordan Love. And so that's a key difference in terms of getting away with that type of quarterback style.
That's a fascinating comp to me.
It's not a perfect one. But again,
when you qualify I mean, you're so early in the process.
Right. And so think about Jordan Love play. Think about the same player, but with 75% of the arm and the size. I mean, that to me, that creates questions. So, this is going to be a quarterback class that we're debating right up until the end.
Yeah, for sure.
Meanwhile, as it looks, or at least as it stands right now, it looks like the Panthers are going to, once again, have the number 1 overall pick. So it'll be interesting to see what they do now that they're going to go with Bryce Young starting again. They're going to roll with him this weekend, despite the fact that, we've seen, I think, some success with Andy Dalton there. And I think this team is really just trying to figure out his value. As I know that there are teams around the league right now interested to see if they can be the team to sort of revamp him and give him some life. So we'll see what the Panthers do. Dane, I know your backstory, but real quick for those listening, how did you get into this, right? Because most people think of people that are obsessed with football as former professional athletes or former coaches. For you, what got you here?
Yeah, well, after I was drafted I was not drafted.
I wish you kept
you
going.
played football, let's go.
I'm from Northeast Ohio, and when the Browns came back in 1999, I was this 12-year-old kid who became infatuated with evaluation and scouting. And so the goal was always, all right, I want to work for an NFL team. And in order to do that, I said, okay, I'm going to put myself in position to learn and get better. And so I went to Mount Union, D3 powerhouse. And
for sure.
Pierre Garçon and I were seniors together. And that was my informal introduction to the NFL scouting world because I worked for the team and we had scouts coming through every single week. And so it was my job to take the scouts to practice, to the weight, all these different things. And I still have a lot of those relationships that I developed way back when. And like I said, the goal was always to work for a team, but I got into the media in the meantime, and I kind of was like, okay, this is kind of fun where I'm not just working for one team, I'm working for 32, and I'm able to have a little bit more freedom with how we attack this and how we cover it and create content. And so, I've learned from a lot of scouts along the way. There have been some jobs that I've turned down, some jobs that I wish I would have gotten, but I didn't. But it's all kind of led to this point, which has been, working for The Athletic and kind of taking our draft coverage as far as we can take it. And it's been a lot of fun.
You're crushing it, bro. I got smarter on this podcast episode today thanks to you, so I appreciate it.
I know. I hope that I hope you come back and visit with us because I do think it's fun to kind of look back at where these teams were, what they were thinking, and to see how it's panned out for them as pretty much how we started this interview. It's difficult to nail it. It's difficult to get this right, and everyone's going to try to do it, but only few seem to nail it. So you nail it. Thank you so much for hanging out with us here on Scoop City, and we will definitely have you back soon.
I can't wait. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for tuning into Scoop City. If you want to hear more, make sure you like and subscribe. We drop our new episodes every Tuesday and Friday.